All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin our brand new series, Kabbalah Café, all for the sake of heaven. Again, this is what the book looks like. And this text dates all the way back to 1908, actually 1907, the winter of 1907. And it was authored by the fifth of the Chabad Rebbes, at that time and for that time. But the messages resonate today as loudly as ever before. So just to quickly go through a bit of an overview. So all for the sake of heaven is a phrase that actually derives from, I would say, classic Jewish thought and practice. And the line is, V'chol ma'asecha yihiyu l'shem shamayim. All your deeds, all your actions should be for the sake of heaven. And I want to describe what that means, but also kind of like position why that is so, I don't know if the right word is radical, but why that's so, maybe it's radical, especially within the spiritual traditions. These are themes that we've spoken about before in other classes, their context, but certainly given the current discourse, I think it's very powerful, and I would say even also current events. So there's two ways to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish. One way is through war, and another is through diplomacy. Good morning, Dr. Maxey. Good morning, Rivka.
Excuse me. Oh, Rivka, my friend, is just joining us from Israel.
Oh, beautiful. Rivka, welcome. I hope you're safe and sound. And please, God, may you have all the blessings and safety and security that you need. Okay, good. Eva, welcome as well. So there's two ways generally speaking, to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish. One way is through war, and one way is through diplomacy. What's the difference? So when you take the war approach, the statement, the underlying perception is that there's no one to talk to. In other words, this is an enemy, maybe even a mortal enemy, and the only way to deal with the enemy is to knock him out. That's the only way. That's the perspective of war. That's the war perspective. Diplomacy is very different. By the way, I know it sounds like we're speaking about politics or a global, we're speaking about spiritual truths. So diplomacy is different. Diplomacy means that you look at the one across the table who might be opposed to your views or your values, but you recognize that within that opposition, there is hope for an ally. In other words, you believe that given the right effort, given the right, maneuverings, that instead of being on the opposite sides of the table, one day you can be on the same side of the table. So that's the idea of diplomacy. So again, it all comes back to a simple question. And the simple question is, do you look at the other as the enemy, meaning an enemy that the only approach is to destroy? That's the only way to deal with this enemy. Or do you look at the other, as maybe currently someone who is in opposition, but who, given enough time and effort, can actually come around and sit on the same side of the table as you? That's the question. And spiritually, the question is, when we look at the body, when we look at the animal soul, when we look at the things in the world that are not overtly and not demonstrably holy, do we look at them as enemies that must be destroyed, or do we look at them as allies in potential? That's the question. So I want to share with you an insight that the Baal Shem Tov taught. Now, the Baal Shem Tov lived 300 plus years ago, the founder of the Hasidic movement. And the Baal Shem Tov shared the following insight an analysis, a mystical take, if you will, on a verse from the book of Exodus. It's actually from my bar mitzvah Torah portion, my bar mitzvah parsha. I remember reading it as a kid, as a 13-year-old young man. And the verse goes like this. The verse says, if you encounter the donkey of your enemy, and you notice that the donkey is being crushed by its load, by its burden. So again, let's paint the picture before we wrap up the verse. You see a donkey, and you know who the donkey belongs to. It doesn't belong to your friend. It belongs to someone who you're not so friendly with. But you notice that the donkey is being overwhelmed by the burden that's on top of the donkey. There's just too much stuff. It's literally carrying too much weight. And it's in a state of pain. It's in a state of pain. And you might think to yourself, oh, it's my enemy's donkey. I don't like my enemy. I don't like my enemy's donkey. So kisira chamar seinacha, in the language of the Torah, if and when you will see the donkey of your enemy, rovetz tachas masai, crouching. In other words, it's physically being, overburdened by its load. V'chadalta me'azayv lai, and your first thought is, I'm not helping it. I'm not helping my enemy. I'm not helping my enemy's donkey. Says the Torah in the book of Exodus, azov ta'azov imo. You must help your enemy unload the donkey. Take off the burden, take off the weight. So you could say, wow, what an amazing mitzvah. What an amazing mitzvah. Look at how Torah teaches us to be sensitive to animals, right? Even if the animal belongs to your enemy, if the animal's in pain, you got to step up. And by the way, if that's the takeaway from the mitzvah, beautiful. Dayenu. That itself is a beautiful lesson. But let's go a little further. Another takeaway from this might be that when it comes to your enemy, the Torah is saying there's a time and a place to be fighting, right? It's not always that you need to fight with your enemy. Sometimes you got to lay down the sword, as it were. And even though the other person is an enemy, but you can help them out in their time of need. You don't have to be fighting with them when they're in a time of need. That's another lesson. Dayenu. So whether the lesson is about tsar ba'alei chayim, which let me translate that, tsar ba'alei chayim, the pain of animals. There are multiple, I believe dozens, maybe a dozen commandments in the Torah that speak to the Torah's sensitivity to animals. You might wonder, does Torah speak about animals, how we treat animals? Yes, 100%. 100%. This is one of them. So whether it's that lesson, again, I'm using the refrain, Dayenu, that itself, what a beautiful and sensitive and compassionate and Torah message, Torah-esque Torah message. Beautiful. Or the idea that you might have an enemy, but sometimes you got to help your enemy. In other words, they're not really your enemy. Take it easy. That's also a beautiful lesson. Comes along the Baal Shem Tov. It says, in addition to all of this, in addition to all of the other lessons that we might have and derive from this, there's also a very personal message, because the story is not only talking about the Torah's narrative and the law is not only talking about a donkey and an enemy and an actual burden. The Torah is also talking about the inner donkey. Now there's an inner donkey. Whoever said there was an inner donkey? Oh, hold on. Welcome to Kabbalah. Kabbalah teaches that every one of us has an inner animal. An inner animal. We all have not only a yetzer hara, an evil inclination, we also have a nefesh habahamis. We have an animal soul. And by the way, there's different types of animals, as you might have noticed, right? If you go to the zoo, you'll notice there are different types of animals. There are some animals that are a little bit more calm and gentle, and some animals that are very rough and aggressive. And the truth is, every one of us has a different type of animal soul. Some of us, our animal souls are very gentle, very serene. Oh, by the way, they're still an animal, meaning they are still defined by their animalistic nature. They still want what they want. They seek pleasure, they seek safety, they seek security. It's still an animal, but it's more of a tranquil animal. Then you have wild animals. You have like an ox, a behemoth, right? An ox, a goring ox, an aggressive ox. You have animals that can be very aggressive. And some people have very aggressive animal souls, where the animal soul is not just pleasure seeking, but it's also looking for a little bit of action. It also wants something, it needs a little bit of a chaos and drama. Some people have that type of animal soul. Everyone's different. By the way, just parenthetically, because this is very important. In other words, even though it's parenthetical, it's important, and I therefore want to mention it. So everyone's animal soul is different, and it's perfectly matched to balance their godly soul. Okay, that's a really important lesson in truth in life. We each possess two different souls, a godly soul and an animal soul. And as Kabbalah teaches us, these two souls are perfectly in the balance, which means that the assets of one match the liabilities of the other. The strengths of your godly soul perfectly match the weaknesses of your animal soul. And the challenges of the animal soul perfectly push the buttons of the virtue of your godly soul. This explains a phenomenon that I'm sure we've all encountered, which is you meet someone, and the first thing you pick up on when you meet this person are their weaknesses. And the next thing you know, you're thinking in your head, wow, I could solve this person's problems. 1, 2, 3. It's like, I can clearly see what the problem is with this person, and I clearly see what the solution is. And so maybe I should just tell them how to fix their life because it's so obvious. I can't believe they don't see it. How is that even possible that they don't see themselves how to fix their life? Okay. And that happens in life. It happens where we become experts at analyzing, diagnosing, and then even in our own minds coming up with solutions to fix the other person's problems. Why is that? Why is that? For a very simple reason. Because their animal soul doesn't push our godly soul's buttons, which means that all we're looking at is an animal soul, and we're looking at the animal soul from a detached place. And we say, oh, that animal soul, I know how to fix that. That's easy. The problem is there's no point in fixing that animal soul. The whole point in life is to fix our animal soul. That's a little bit harder, right? We notice everyone else's flaws, and we notice and we can come up with everyone else's solutions to their flaws, except for our own. Why? Because our own are a little bit harder, because that's ours. It's the reason they're our challenges is because it's the ones that are the most difficult for us to accomplish, to overcome. So it's easy to figure out, it's easy to discern, it's easy to ascertain someone else's problems, easy to fix someone else's problems. It's a little bit harder to fix our own. But that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where the purpose of life is, in addressing and correcting our issues. So let's get back. All that was parenthetical. So let's get back to the statement and the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, because this is really marvelous. Hey, Ramon, good to see you. This is really marvelous. Welcome. You got the pick of the. So this takes us to the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov is absolutely mind blowing, and I want to. So again, I want to review a little bit the the verse, and then we're going to jump into the mystical interpretation. So the verse says, Kisira chamar soinaacha rovetz tachas maso. If you will see the donkey of your enemy crouching under its burden, meaning it's too much weight on the back of the donkey and it's in pain. And you might be tempted to just keep on walking and not help. Torah says, no, azov ta'azov imo, you have to help this guy, your enemy. You got to work together to alleviate the burden from the donkey. Comes on the Baal Shem Tov and says the following. We just said that everyone has an animal soul. Generally speaking, in this verse, the word donkey is being used as a euphemism to describe the animal soul, right? The inner donkey, the inner donkey. There's a verse that says that humans are born as a wild donkey, So we have that wild nature inside, that animal soul, that inner donkey. So here we go. You ready for the Baal Shem Tov's take on this? It's unbelievable. He says a person who's journeying on their spiritual path and been working spiritually for years and years and years on themselves might come to the conclusion, and the person might have become or is becoming enlightened in spirituality. Okay, and the next step and the next conclusion is, my donkey is my enemy, right? Again, a non-literal interpretation of the verse. Who is my enemy? It's not the donkey of my enemy. The donkey is my enemy. In other words, what is the greatest kryptonite? What is the greatest enemy of my spiritual growth? It's my animal soul. It's my inner animal that's pulling me in lower places and making me run after all of these material things that are a distraction to spirituality. So a person might come to the conclusion that my donkey is my enemy, not the enemy of my donkey. Donkey equals enemy. Animal soul is my enemy. And therefore, let me burden it. You with me on this non-literal interpretation of the verse? Let me burden the donkey until it collapses. Let me fast. Let me, lead a life of deprivation, a life of shunning and disregarding and completely abnegating the body, right? So that I will break the animal soul. A person says, look, the animal soul for too long has held me down. No longer. I'm going to break this animal soul. I'm going to break this donkey. You just watch. I'm going to break it. I'm going to make it collapse under its burden, and I'm not going to help it. It's out. I'm going to get rid of this donkey. Comes along the Torah and says that's not the right approach. If you think your donkey is your enemy and you want to crush it under a burden, you got it all wrong. Azov ta'azov imo, you got to help your donkey. You got to help your inner donkey. Now you ask the question, 1 second, I got to help my inner donkey. You don't understand what this donkey does to me all day. I should help my donkey. Why would I help this donkey? I'm going to help it and feed it so that it has more energy to be more aggressive against me, against my interest. That's craziness. Who would do that? Who would ever help their enemy against them? It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to feed my enemy, right? I'm going to fuel my enemy. I'm going to cuddle and coddle my enemy just so that it can have the ability to hurt me. Why would I do that? No way. I'm going to break my enemy. Comes on the Torah and says, well, your premise is wrong. Who told you that your animal soul is your enemy? You came to that conclusion that your animal soul is your enemy. But if you look at it from another perspective, your animal soul is an ally, not an enemy. You should be working with your animal soul, not against your animal soul. And yes, initially, you might be tempted to say, it's an enemy, I got to get rid of it, I got to fight against it. But in truth, it's not an enemy, it's a potential ally. The work of life from the mystical tradition, from the perspective of the mystical tradition, the work of life is to bring your animal soul on board with your divine service, with your spiritual pursuit. It's not to destroy it. It's not to get rid of it. It's not to push it away. It's to bring it on board. That is the ultimate goal. This becomes very important because so many spiritual traditions, right, at the core of the tradition is this idea that we're trying to get away from the body or get away from the animal or get away from even material things, right? So the less material we live, less materialistically we live our lives, then the more spiritual we are. That's the intuitive approach of most spiritual paths. It's like the old joke that I've told many times, I'm sure, of the Jewish woman who goes to the Far East. She goes to Tibet, and she wants to meet the guru, right? She wants to meet the guru, the one that everybody is looking to guidance. And she has to take this very long journey into the mountains of Tibet. And she takes, remember that movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? She takes, planes and then trains and then automobiles. And eventually she gets, to where the mountain is, where this guru is, and they tell her you can't go with, you can't, there's no vehicles can go up here. You have to go in an ox cart. And then after the ox cart, it can't go any further. She has to walk and climb the mountain to get to the top. When she gets to the top, she asks for to meet the guru, and they say, no, you have to fast for 30 days or be 30 days in, prayer and meditation. And only then can you be admitted. Finally, she's admitted to see the guru, and they tell her, you have 3 words. They tell her you have 3 words. Good morning. Good to see you. You have 3 words we got some bagels. You have 3 words with the guru. And she says, okay, I understand what's going on here. So they let her in, and she sees the guru, and she looks down. The guru is sitting there with his eyes closed, kind of, cross-legged and, whatever, in that state of, meditative pose. And she says her 3 words, Sheldon, come home. Yeah. Many spiritual paths teach that if you want to be spiritual, you got to escape. You got to go to a mountaintop somewhere in Tibet. That's the only way to be spiritual. If you want to be holy, you got to go somewhere else. You have to leave the world. You have to leave, you have to leave the city. You have to go to the mountains, right? To go into the fresh air. By the way, I should mention, we're planning a Shabbaton into the mountains, but it's not to escape. I mean, a little bit escape, for the weekend. All right.
Well, that's a date. That's a date.
Huh? October 30th October 31st to November 2nd. Please save the day. Camp Ramah Darom in Clayton, Georgia. A gorgeous campsite. All right, but back to this. So many spiritual paths instruct us to leave this space, the material space, in order to get spiritual. Judaism is a radically different approach, which is, but again, before we get to the Judaism approach or Kabbalah's approach, which is Judaism approach, understand what the premise of the classic approach. The premise of the classic approach is that the two are enemies. And if the two are enemies, then you have to choose one or the other. So if you choose materialism, well, then you're not going to be spiritual. I mean, you'll be maybe a little bit spiritual, but you're not really going to be spiritual. You can't really find God if you're living a normal life and have a job and eat like a normal, you're not going to be, then you won't find God. I mean, you'll enjoy breakfast and lunch and you'll have a job and you'll make money, but you're not going to you want to find God, to give all that up, wear white robes and sit on top of a mountain in prayer and meditation. Then you'll find God, because it looks like these spiritual paths look at the physical world as the enemy of God. Judaism is so radical in the notion of Hashem Echad, God is one. And I know we're starting a new book, but obviously it's Kabbalah. So, we're also blending some things that we studied recently and in previous series of Kabbalah Café. Look, Judaism has a radical take in divine oneness. God is one means that God is one with everything that he's created, which means you don't need to leave the world to find God. God is right here. Now, yes, it is true that sometimes we can get so distracted by the stuff that you forget about God. That's legit. That's legit. That's why we have Shabbat built in. We have one day a week. No, really, we have one day a week in which we can say, you know what? No work, right? I'm not even creating anything. I'm not making anything today. All I'm doing is enjoying God's world, enjoying God's presence in my life. I'm not trying to be a creator. I'm being a recipient. All right, so there's one day a week. We have Yom Kippur, one day a year, in which we do wear white and we don't eat. And we kind of go to that mountaintop, right? Ne'ilah, like we're climbing the mountain all day, conceptually, until we get to that place where we close our eyes and the ark is open. We say, Hashem hu Elokim, God is God. Well, I don't know how you translate that. God is the Lord is God, whatever. Whatever we say, Hashem hu Elokim 7 times, and we think about how we're ready to give up everything for God. That's like climbing the mountain, but that's one day a year. Because Judaism, and again, it goes back, it's not like by accident that Judaism, Kabbalah, has a completely radically different take. It's based on this core foundational truth. Is God here or is God there? Is God in heaven? Well, I'm going to reverse the order. Is God in heaven or is God on earth? Most people say, oh, earth, Hashem. The typical take is it's in Book of Psalms. We recite it every Rosh Chodesh, in holidays, in the Hallel. Hashamayim shamayim lashem, right? There's a sun. Hashamayim shamayim lashem v'aretz l'sam lebnei adam. Heaven, the heavens are the heavens for God, and the earth He gave to humankind. That's most people think that this is our playground and heaven is God's playground. So if you want to get close to God, right, you got to climb a mountain or at least sleep in the top of a bunk bed, right? That's the way to get close to God. The higher you are, right? Denver, fantastic. You're way closer to God in Denver, Colorado because of the elevation. I think my wife recently told me that Johannesburg, or maybe my brother-in-law, Leia's brother, Shlomi, I think told me recently that Johannesburg has a very high elevation, almost like Denver, maybe even more, maybe even higher than Denver. You never hear, I don't know, I never heard of that. But apparently, if you're training to run a marathon.
When you were up there?
No, I didn't know that. I mean, that would have gone to my head. I was like, oh, can't breathe. But like, apparently, I didn't know this. That like, I mean, Denver is like, I mean, I guess I'm American, so like I'm Denver centric, but like Denver was always like, yeah, if you want to run a marathon, if you want to get used to like, I don't know, just train yourself, you know, oxygen deprivation, whatever it is, like you train in Denver. You can hit more home runs in Coors Field. I think that's the name of the field in Denver, than elsewhere. Anyway, what's the point? The point is that most people believe, and this is not only today, but it's been throughout time, that if you want to get close to God, you got to get closer to heaven. It's Judaism and Judaism's crazy radical thinking that says you don't need to go to heaven to find God. You can find God right here because God is here as much as He is in heaven. That's a hugely radical hot take. Who believes that? That's crazy. Everyone knows, right? Earth is ours, heaven is God's. And Judaism says, don't limit God to heaven. Nice try, right? Nice try. That's the book. By the way, it's available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazon.
This one, Amazon. I checked last night to be sure. They even have a Kindle version, I think. So it's this completely different worldview that says that God is found equally here as He is up there. So what I want to do now for a moment is we're going to try something kind of crazy, kind of radical. A tale of two parshas. We find ourselves, so today is Sunday. Yesterday in synagogues around the world, we read the Torah portion of Shlach. This week, this coming week and the coming Shabbat, we're going to read the Torah portion of Korach. And I'm going to explain in a second what these portions deal with. What I want to do is, I want to share the following, that the Torah portions of Shlach and Korach that are back to back, right? That their Torah portions, these Torah portions are expressing an incredible message, especially when you read them back to back, about the purpose of life and how we view, finding God within, the physical reality. So here we go. So the Torah portion of Shlach, which we read last week and yesterday, Shabbat, in synagogues around the world, Torah portion of Shlach is, by the way, I was involved in this one. You didn't find my name? What? Oh, it's only inside page 7. Page 7. Yeah, it's not in the typical place. I think I helped write the intro to it. This came out after I moved to Atlanta, so I wasn't full time over there. So here we go. So last week's Torah portion of Shlach, tells the story of the Meraglim, the spies. And just a very quick TLDR version. TLDR? Too long, didn't read. All right. The very short, consider the very short, too long, didn't read. They put that on posts if, somebody writes a long thing, and then at the end they write TLDR, and then they write like one line that captures the whole thing. So here's the modern way of saying here's the summary. Here's the summary, exactly. Yeah. So here's the summary. Here's the kitzer. Here's the summary. Summary is that Moses sends 12 spies. 10 of 12 come back with a very disheartening report about the land of Israel. There's no way we can conquer it. Cities are too fortified. People are too strong. It's just not going to happen. All right, people panic. And ultimately, God says, all right, this generation is not going to go in. They will wander in the desert for 40 years. And the kids, the next generation, they're going to be the ones to go in. That's the story. Sorry if I should have said spoiler alert in case anyone didn't read it. But it is a 3,300-year-old book. And if you haven't yet read it, that's on you. Okay, so here we go. So that's the story. Of course, all the commentaries are discussing and trying to figure out what is it about, how did the spies flip? They were all kosher. Kulam ksherim him, the commentators say they're all kosher. They were leaders of the tribes. Moses handpicked them. 12 people, he picked for this mission. How could 10 go rogue? What's going on here? Something doesn't even make sense. Okay. So many answers are given. There's the mystical answer, the Kabbalistic answer. And I shared it Tuesday night at our Torah studies class. We touched on it. But I just focus for a moment again on it, and then we're going to tie it into the contrast between last week's portion and this week's portion. So here we go. What was the fear of the spies? So simply the fear of the spies was that, oh no, like we're not going to be able to conquer the land because there are giants there. The cities are, they have big walls and fortresses around the cities. Was that the problem? I mean, they didn't believe that God could, do a miracle. They had a much bigger fear. It wasn't about the giants, and it wasn't about the fortification of the cities. It was about the spiritual challenge. In the desert, they were not facing any materialistic temptation. There was no materialism around. They didn't have to go to work. They didn't have to, they got bread from heaven. They didn't have to go shopping. There was no carpool. There was nowhere to go. It says that they had a cloud, the clouds of glory surround them, protected them, literally paved the way before they walked. Like they sell shoes. Oh, there's even a company, On Cloud or something, On Clouds. All right, something like that, a very comfortable shoe. They were walking on clouds, right? The clouds paved the way, got rid of all the snakes and scorpions in the desert, protecting them from the heat. It says the cloud cleaned their clothing, right? It laundered their clothing well before dry cleaning. There was cloud cleaning. Yeah. Talk about a dry cleaner. I should probably, I should probably open up that cloud dry cleaner powered by AI, because you have to write AI at this point.
It said the clouds cleaned their clothes.
The clouds cleaned their clothes. Isn't it right? The cloud cleaned their clothes, and the clothes grew with them. And next to my tailor, I have said my alteration store, which I've shared before, right? The Swift tailor. I've definitely shared that before. My idea, yeah. Dr. Maxie is nodding. She had definitely heard this one before, right? Open up. So it can be attached because these two usually go together. So we have the Swift tailor and cloud cleaning. Anyway, the Swift tailor, not Taylor Swift. No, that's different. That's totally different. That's, I'm sure, a trademark from here to from here to the lawyers. But yeah, the Swift Taylor. What could go wrong? Next to cloud cleaners. This is great. Anyway, back to the story. So they had all the amenities of like a 4 or 5, whatever it is, star hotel, whatever the highest level is. I guess 5-star, 4-star, 5. All right, we'll go with 5. Sounds good. 5-star hotel. You got all the amenities. You got all the food, whatever you want. The manna tastes like whatever you wanted. Could you imagine that?
I think it's heard of it.
Huh?
I think it's heard of it. If it's
Oh, you know what's interesting?
What?
That's interesting. Okay, 1 second. So that I'll get to that in a second. So the manna could taste whatever they wanted. It could taste like whatever they wanted. You wanted a pizza, it's a pizza. You wanted a burger, it's a burger. You wanted sushi, it's sushi. You wanted a Caesar salad without the croutons, you got it. Whatever you wanted, you had it. It tasted like whatever you wanted. And yet the people complain. So first of all, the lesson is people will complain. Jews will complain about anything. So, but it's also, this is a few weeks ago, we read in the Torah portion, Bahaloska, maybe it was there. They complained about the manna. But one of the things that they said in their complaint is that they complained about how it looks. And this leads the commentators to say, you know what the problem was? It tasted different, but it looked the same. We're such visual eaters. Anyone that's in like the catering business will tell you that the food, it's about 90% visual and 10% to taste. Like if it looks good, I mean, how bad is the food? It's not going to be bad. I mean, unless it's really bad, then don't hire that caterer. But by and large, it's going to taste okay. But what differentiates like the great caterers from the, okay caterers is the presentation, right? Think about like the fancy restaurants. I'm not, okay, I have to be clear. I'm not saying that there's not a difference in the freshness of the ingredients and the actual, the menu and the food. Yes, there can be, and there is certainly differences between lower end and higher end. But a major piece of eating is the visual. If you ate, I'm just trying to think of like, because I don't really know what the manna looked like. There's some descriptions, but I don't know. But imagine if it was like a piece of cardboard. But if you eat it and the texture was cardboard, but it could taste like anything, eventually you'll be like, I'm done with the cardboard. I know it can taste like, it's like scratch and sniff. Remember those? Like, oh, strawberry, creams and strawberry. It's still cardboard. Like I'm still eating cardboard. Again, I'm not saying, just to be clear, that the manna was cardboard.
That's amazing.
But it probably was something along those lines. It was just something kind of bland and the texture didn't change. It's not like it tastes
like grits.
Maybe like grits, yeah. Which is ground up cardboard. I mean, I don't know.
So we eat cookies.
Oh yeah, like porridge or whatever.
Something like honey or something like that. So.
Like fried in honey, and I'm thinking like beignets. Like, what could go wrong? That sounds good. I don't know. Put some powdered sugar on it and call it Hanukkah. But anyway, listen. They eventually tired of it because of the visual. Oh, so what's the point? They had all amenities. Think about it. Imagine you go to like a Lux hotel. Oh, and by the way, when they played golf, it says every shot the clouds directed it to a hole in one. I'm kidding. Okay, that one I may have embellished on. But imagine you're in a space and everything is taken care of. The laundry is done. The food is done. It's comfortable. It's always a cool and comfortable 72 or maybe 70, whatever your preference is, degrees. At night, there's a fire, right? You got a fireplace. Every night, there's a bonfire. And maybe someone with a guitar singing. I remember when we went to St. Bart's to help the Minyan with Ron Perlman, as I've shared many times before. We went to the, what was that hotel called? The Carl Gustaf. Still remember that. The Carl Gustaf. It was fantastic. And there was the guy that would always sing, would you know my name?
That's my brother's.
If I saw you in heaven. Right? Play like a little acoustic guitar right there in the thing. I just remember that song. We would always play it.
Yeah.
They had all the amenities. They had the fire. They had the cloud. They had the food. Oh, wait a second.
So we're still talking about the sky.
They had talked. What was life like in the desert? It was the most incredible. Physically, it was so comfortable. But wait a second. There's more. You go to sign up for a Pesach program, right? So what do they offer? They offer, all the physical amenities and, all the, kosher food and whatever it is. And they have top speakers. Well, guess what? This program also had top speakers. Moses, not going to get better than that. You're not going to get a better Torah class than from Moses, who's like got the ear, like the little like ear communication from God himself, right? He's like, oh, just got a new one, send away the mother bird before you take the eggs. What? They had everything, physical amenities, spiritual amenities, and now they were poised to enter the land of Israel. And what happens? He sends the spies. And the spies come back and they say, or they're thinking, forget what they say. They're thinking in their heads, you know what's going to happen in like a moment? This whole thing, it's almost like you're on vacation and it's the night before you got to go back and you have that feeling like, oh, do I have to really go back to real life? Do I need to go back to my job? What if life was just a vacation? You ever have that feeling? It's not a bad feeling. And you think to yourself, well, can I make it work? Would anyone notice if I just like stayed on vacation forever? Would the hotel notice? Maybe the resort wouldn't notice that a room was just like locked and do not disturb on the outside. Maybe they would just, bring food, kosher food, and I could attend all the classes and whatever. Like, what would be the problem? The spies fundamentally did not want to give up their life of spiritual luxury. The physical stuff was taken care of. Not that they were in it for the physical, but the physical wasn't the distraction. It was easy. It was done. It was taken care of. All it says when Mashiach comes, all of the physical things will be taken care of so that we can focus exclusively on knowing God, connecting with God. They were living the messianic life. They had the food, they had the clothes, they had everything. All the physical things were taken care of. That was provided for them. And all they did all day, study, pray, meditate, right? Schmooze with Moses, right? That was the podcast, Schmooze with Moses, right? Came out daily. That's all they had. That was amazing. You know what's going to happen when they go into Israel? It's like going back to work. Yeah.
Now we have to fight
Room service. Yeah. Well, that's only technical. Room service over. No more manna from heaven. Oh, you want food? All right. Make a plan. I should make a plan. Yeah, no one's delivering. There's no Instacart yet. No one's delivering food to your door. Nice try. You want to get food? I don't know. Figure it out. Become a farmer or become a business person. Take money and pay the farmer. Either way, you're going to have to figure out your food. It sounds like it's take a lot of hours a day. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Most of your day might be figuring out how to get food. That might be a thing. I always think about how do they figure out which berries were poisonous. I'm assuming trial and error, right? Yeah. I'm assuming people like, I wonder what that. Don't do what Jim just did because that didn't work out. So anyway, that's going to come to an end and you have to fend for yourself. What about your clothing? Right? You got to figure that out. I don't know. Spend time with that. Spend time with just moving around and figuring stuff out you're now in the grind. And so the spies said, well, this is going to be a problem. Not only are we going to be so entrenched in materialism and material neat things and activities and whatever that it's going to, that's going to be annoying. But aside from that, when are we going to pray? When are we going to study? There's not going to be any time. This is a bad deal. This is a bad deal. We don't want to go into this land. Eretz ochelas yoshveh. It's going to consume us. We're going to be consumed by the land, by materialism. We don't want that. This is way better. Vacation is way better than real life.
Was anything else offered? Like you would have to get your food and all that, but
no. The only counter was that when you go into the land, you become a farmer, then you'll get the opportunity to do the mitzvot associated with farming. They're like, yeah, I'd rather just not deal with that altogether. That it just doesn't sound like a good deal. It sounds like a very bad deal. It's like, wow, like that's not
if you go here, you get to do commandments. Like,
Well, but no, it's not even that. It's like you get to be a farmer, and then you get to like give 10% as the tithe to the Levites, and they're like, oh, I don't know about this.
So what was a good report from Caleb?
So we had to intersect. So why were they wrong? So they were wrong fundamentally. They weren't. I mean, they were right, but they were also wrong. They were right in the sense that when the moment they would step foot in Israel, all the miracles would end. Life, it would be real life, and it would be really, really hard. Like the life that we know. Like life is hard. It's not easy. You're not given anything on it. Nothing is just delivered to you. It's just you got to work for everything you have, and the physical stuff takes a lot of time and mind space, and we're left with relatively very little time and brain space for the spiritual stuff. That's just, if we think about 24 hours, between rest and work and just maneuvering around the world, whether it's driving or carpool or commuting, whatever it is, or shopping, making food, whatever the stuff is, taking kids to who knows. We have how many hours left a day for higher activities? A few out of 24 hours. 1, 2 max. Right? Halacha says you should study Torah 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening. An hour, ideally, maybe a half an hour if you have. And then we have some time for prayers in the day also. It's like a few hours a day. They were 24/7 plugged in. I mean, they were sleeping also, but like, what did they didn't have anything to do. There was nothing else to do. So why were they wrong? So on the one hand, they were right, and that remains. They were right that they would fall down from their spiritual space. But the reason they were wrong is because, well, I guess first and foremost, because God told them to go. So you can't outsmart God. You're like, well, God is telling me to leave this behind and to go, to leave vacation, go back home. But I really prefer vacation. So God, sorry, but I think you're wrong. So first of all, you can't outsmart God. If God says time to leave vacation, time to go back to life, or time to go into life, then you got to shut off your brain a little bit and accept that. But why is that? The answer is because fundamentally, the purpose of life is to find the spirituality in the physical stuff. That's the whole point of today's opening session. It's to view the world and the farming and the carpool and the cooking and the eating, to view that as not an exclusively material or physical activity that comes at the expense of spiritual connection, but that's something that you can also find spirituality in those activities as well. You can find spirituality while cooking and eating. You can find spirituality while working and farming. You can find spirituality while driving your kids around from one activity to the other. You can make those elevated experiences. And that is finding God in those places is way cooler and more important than finding God in the middle of an oasis in the desert, because that doesn't take any effort at all. Because living the desert life is basically saying that God is not in earth, God is only in heaven. And we happen to be in a state that is heavenly-like or heaven-like. Going into Israel, meaning assuming a physical life, means that you're declaring that I know that I can find God on earth as well. In the farming, in the food, in the work, in the mundane activities, I can find God here as well. That's the tachlis. That's the ultimate. So they weren't right. They were actually wrong. I mean, their intentions on some level were noble. First of all, they defied God's will, so that's never cool.
Right.
But even though their intentions were noble, they weren't 100% right. I know I said before that they were right. They were right if you consider materialism or physical. If you consider physical and spiritual opposites or enemies, then they were right. Because material, the physical, is the enemy of the spiritual. And so going into a physical life is going to take away. It's either or.
I think there's also something to be said there about I just think about how they were like, it's almost like they wanted to restart this. Like they wanted to stay in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And God wanted them to go forward into new things. And they're like, well, let's go back to Egypt. Like,
Right.
let's restart the entire thing. And I think there's just something to be said about staying in your comfort zone and your security zone when God's like, no, I actually had a plan for you to go defeat these giants, you know?
Yeah, you want what's comfortable, and God says, yeah, but there's growth here in this challenge. You're like, why? I'd rather not have the growth. But you know, focusing it on the material spiritual divide, if you view the two as antagonists or as enemies or as either ors, so then either you're leading a spiritual life or you're leading a physical life, and it's going to come at the expense of the spiritual. And ultimately, the response to the spies, mystically, Kabbalistically, is you guys got it wrong. The physical world, the material, leading a material life is not the opposite of leading a spiritual life. You can be spiritual and lead a physical life. And in fact, that's the greatest spiritual life, is finding God in the physical stuff around us. Does that make sense? So what did the spies want? They wanted to remain in a spiritual environment. Why were they wrong? Because God is not only in heaven, God is also on earth. And our job is to find God in the stuff. All that we do should be for the sake of heaven. Our work, our eating, the meals that we have, the people we have over, our socialization, socializing, it should all be tied to a higher purpose. Now, one second. Now we have this week's Torah portion. So what's the lesson? What's the lesson of last week's Torah portion? God is not only on heaven, he is, and primarily he is on earth. Great. Comes along Korach. Korach was a cousin of Moses. He was a fellow Levite. And at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, the new Torah portion for this week, he comes along and he gathers a bunch of people against Moses and Aaron. And he says, why do you, Moses and Aaron, why do you lift yourselves up above the congregation? Why do you make yourselves so holy and noble and righteous? And, we're the leaders and you guys have to listen to us. He says, the entire congregation, Kulam Kedoshim, they're all holy. All the people are holy. Umaduatis naso kal Hashem. So why do you raise yourselves up over God's people? Everyone is holy. Understand that Korach immediately follows the lesson from the spies. What was the lesson of the spies? God is not in heaven. God is on earth, which means that you can find God when you farm. You can find God in business. You can find God everywhere. Comes along Korach, the next portion. And Korach says, you can find God as a farmer. So then, one second. So the farmers connect with God? Yeah. Oh, even more, like even greater. The farmers even, because you're finding God in the earth. Okay. So then Moses, what makes you Moses? Why are you so special? The farmer is as good as you. Because you're speaking with God? So is the farmer. You understand what's going on here? The outcome of Shlach leads to Korach. The two portions are connected. Right? The outcome, the lesson of Shlach is God is found everywhere. God is found everywhere, in everyone and everywhere. Comes along Korach and says, well, is that what you're telling us? Cool. So then the farmer who spends 10 hours a day schlepping radishes, here's the disclaimer. I don't know how radishes, happen, but assuming that they need to be schlepped out of the ground or something, right? This guy that's pulling stuff out of the earth all day, or putting seeds in, pulling stuff out, essentially, right? Pulling and investing, and then, or the stock trader, or the whatever, or the chef, or the business, or the seafaring merchant who's buying and selling merchandise, or the person that has the stand in the shuk and is selling orange. That person is as holy as the scholar. And because don't forget, last week you told the scholar, you told the people that wanted to stay in the base medrash, in the yeshiva, you said leave and go into the real world. So what you're saying is that you should stop secluding yourself in the four walls of the academy and get a real job because God is there. Great. So Moses, Madua tisnasu kal Hashem. Why are you lifting yourselves up over the congregation? Kulam kadoshim. Everyone's holy. The rabbi and the farmer are equally holy. Moses, you're no better than us. He wasn't a farmer, but he meant you're no better than everyone else. You with me on this? It's a really good question.
Yeah, great.
It's a really good question.
Real life question.
It's such a good question. It's such a good question that it almost seems like this cannot be answered, and the Korach was right. Korach wasn't just running a campaign, democracy and power to the people and liberté, fraternité, égalité. This wasn't a Napoleon-esque type campaign, freedom. This wasn't just that. There was a spiritual component to it. He's saying, look, if you're telling me that God is on earth as equally as God is in heaven, then that means that God is in the field as much as he is in the books. So Moses, you may be, the guy associated with Torah, but this guy is associated with earth, and God's on earth. So that means that you're no greater than him. So what makes you Moses? Why are you Moses? Why are this everyone's holy? It's such a good question. You almost can't answer it, except you can. And the answer is so subtle, but it's so important. The only way you find God on earth is if you appreciate heaven. The only way the farmer finds God in the field is if there is a Torah, is if there is a synagogue, is if there is a Beit Midrash, a house of study. Meaning, if the narrative becomes, well, God is everywhere, and so no matter what you're doing, this is God. You know what starts to happen? We stop elevating things. We stop elevating the earth to God. We're just saying, well, God is right here. Then all I need to do is eat, and that's it. Not eat for a higher purpose, not work for a higher purpose. God is found on earth, but it's found with the consciousness that I'm working for a higher purpose, or that I'm eating for a higher purpose, or that I'm socializing for a higher purpose, or I'm taking my kids to soccer, but there's a higher purpose here as well. It only works when it's being done for the sake of heaven, for a higher purpose. The moment you collapse higher and lower and say, well, everything's on equal plane, is the moment you cease to elevate the lower to the higher. And at that point, earth becomes disconnected from heaven. You with me on that?
And yet you should still maintain that everything's equal at the same time.
But here's how it works. The real lesson to this, and that's where it's subtle. The spies, okay, let's go back to the spies. We'll run through it one more time. The spies were saying, let's not go into Israel. Let's not get our hands dirty with the earth. Let's just remain here in the spiritual cocoon of the desert, in the cloud. Let's just be spiritual. And the answer to them was, no, you got it wrong. You got to go in, be a farmer, and find God. But the subtlety there is, one second. You're not finding God by just farming. You're finding God by farming and then taking that 10% and giving it to the Levite. Or by taking the food, putting it on your Shabbat table and celebrating the holy day of Sabbath, the holy Sabbath, right? That's how you're elevating the earth. That's how you're elevating that. Or you go to work, right? And you earn money and then you give some tzedakah. Or you work in an honest fashion. Somebody says, well, work is holy in and of itself, so then I'm just going to lie, cheat, and steal in business, and that's holy. No, that's not holy. It's only when you tether the physical experience with something higher that you can realize the purpose of the physical. You still need that hierarchy. So Korach says, well, if the purpose is the earthly experience, then we don't need Moses. No, you do need Moses, meaning you need something higher. Because if a person believes that God is found in business, but then forgets the second half of that, when you do business in a correct and holy fashion, and just says, well, then again, I'll make deals I'll steal, I'll lie, but I'll make a lot of money. Isn't that holy? We say, no, you're a ganef. You're a thief. That's not holy. It's not holy to rob. That's not holy. But what do you mean? You said everything is holy. No, we said everything can be holy if you do it for a higher purpose. For a higher purpose still implies there's higher and there's lower. The earth is holy when you utilize it for a higher purpose, but not in and of itself.
I see.
That's the answer to Korach. It's a little bit more subtle.
Right.
The message, the lesson for the message to the spies was, you guys got it wrong. You guys want to stay up here. You got to go down there. But it's not just going down there. It's taking the stuff down there and reconnecting it, plugging it back in to up there. That's the truth. You need both. Shlach and Korah, these two portions remind us this. It's the title. This is the opening session is explaining the title. All for the sake of heaven means that everything I do, not everything I do in a synagogue, everything I do in life, the food that I eat, the people that I meet, the business all the stuff that I do in life. And I know I keep on, when I talk about life, I'm talking about the same things like food and work. But I think that's kind of what we do, right? We eat and we work. What else? And then there's family, right? And then there's the spiritual stuff. But all for the sake of heaven means that everything, all your deeds, all the work that you do should be for the sake of heaven. That implies two things. Number one, it's good to do things, not to remain in the cloud, but that it all should be for the sake of heaven, to plug it back in to what is higher. You still need that higher, or else you're not connecting with anything, right? If you just sink in to the physical experience, you have not elevated it. The whole purpose of life is to get into the material things and then to elevate it. To give you an example that's brought in Kabbalah. It's actually a mechanical example. And I've actually seen this in mystical works, and they write it sometimes with the English word. Maybe it's not originally an English word. Maybe it's also like a Latin word, or Italian or French or whatever it is. Lever or lever, right? You know what a lever is? Basically, when you're trying to lift something. So you have, I don't know how we're going to do this. You have like almost like a seesaw, right? Like you have a middle thing, and then you have this a fulcrum, right? You put this under the thing, and then you push down on this side, and you lift the other side, right?
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe it's a robot dance, right? So you lift the one thing, right? So let's say, oh, here we go. We have my recorder here, right? So you want to lift up something. So you put this under the thing, and then you push down here, and you lift it up, and somehow it's easier when you use a lever. It's easier to do that. So it reminds me of the story about a guy who's driving a truck, and he's driving through a town, and he loses, and his brakes fail, and he's headed straight toward the middle of town. They had a huge lever. There's a huge in the middle of town, and everyone knew that if you hit that lever, the whole town flows up. The thing, it's just somehow. And so he figures he'll just steer the truck away, but then he sees that if he moves the truck to the side, there's only one side that he goes. His friend Nate is there, so now he's concerned. What does he do? He decides better Nate than lever. After all that, but getting back to lever, better late than never, better Nate than lever. Anyway, getting back to the lever, that was probably the worst of all time. I do think that of all of the all-timers, that's got to be the worst. So the lever works when you put the thing, see, very scientific, the thing right under the bottom of the other thing. You're not going to lift it. It's like 7-layer cake. You're not going to get the whole thing by lifting from the middle. That's not going to work. You're going to get 3 layers of your 7-layer cake. That's going to be very disappointing. If you want that whole 7-layer cake slice, you got to get under it, right? The same thing is true in the world. If we want to, the whole goal is to elevate the world. That means you have to be from the bottom. You can't elevate it from the top. The spy said, what if we stay in the desert? What if we, well, hear us out. We'll stay here where it's very serene and spiritual, and we'll kind of like summon the energies that we need to summon from here. It's not going to work. You got to lever it. You got to get under it. You got to get in it. You got to get your hands dirty and lift it up. So Korach says, oh, so we're getting our hands dirty? Great. So the farmer is as good as Moses. We don't need Moses because we got farmers, right? All right. We are farmers. Guess where to Moses, right? That was their jingle that they said. We don't need Moses anymore because we have farmers. And the answer to Korach is no. This whole thing is about lifting up. You still have to have a sense of what's up and what's down. And Moses gives you that sense. Moses is up. The farmer is down. Not the farmers any less than Moses. The farmers are great, right? Hashtag farmers are awesome. But the farming in and of itself is not holy. It's only when you lift it up to a holy place that that becomes the ultimate expression of holiness in the earth. So you need both. You got to get your hands dirty, but you also have to be looking to lift it up, like with the lever from the bottom all the way to the top. That's the combination of the two Torah portions. It's this time of year when we read Shlach and then Korach back to back, and we read about two mistakes that happened. The spies made one mistake. They thought the purpose was spirituality, but Korach made another mistake. He thought the purpose was only physicality. It's not either or. It's the combination of both that makes the magic. You got to get into the physical world and then elevate it to a spiritual place. That's the magic sauce. But it's all founded. The truth is all founded on one simple reality, that the physical world is not a contradiction to spirituality. It can be lifted. It can be lifted. Don't look at them as an either or. I got to choose one lane or the other. I can't have it all. You can have it all. You can be a farmer and you can be a spiritualist, right? You could be a Moses and you can be a farmer. And that's, I mean, you got to have both. The one who's studying also has to go out there into the world. And the one who's out there in the world also has to go study. Because if you don't have that, then you're not going to fulfill the purpose. The purpose is to bridge the two together because they are bridgeable. So getting back to the larger piece. Most people throughout history have believed that if you want spirituality, you have to leave the physical reality. You have to be like the spies wanted. You have to be alone in the desert, no distractions, no physical, activities or needs, bothering you. That's the only way that you can find God. Judaism, it's Torah. Kabbalah illuminates, because you can read the stories of the spies and Korach and be like, well, the spies were evil. They were afraid of the giants. And Korach was power hungry. And you can miss the whole story. You can miss this whole subtle spiritual, physical dynamic. Kabbalah, that's where Kabbalah comes in. Kabbalah illuminates the narratives, the stories of the Torah, and says there's a much deeper drama going on here.
It's like a decoder ring.
It's like a decoder ring, and it literally shining light on the stories of Torah and saying, this is not just, 10 bad apples that, didn't believe in God, or Korach, a cousin who was jealous of his cousin Moses and who wanted the power for himself. It could also be that. But there's a much deeper narrative. And the narrative is that these were people who didn't find the right balance between the physical and the spiritual. The spies were too spiritual. Korach went the opposite extreme. And the answer is you got to have both. You got to have the integration of both. Lead a normal physical life with a higher intention and purpose, with higher intentionality. I'm going to go to work, but I'm also going to do it honestly because I know that God's in control. And when I earn money, I'm going to make sure to use some of it on myself, obviously, but also for a higher purpose. And the food that I eat, I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm also going to recite a blessing before I eat it and after I eat it, because I know that it's not just my food. Even if I was the farmer that had to plow the earth and sow the earth and I had to do all those things, I know that I don't run the world. God does. And so I make my eating a spiritual experience as well. That's the ultimate. And that's what it means, all for the sake of heaven. I want to end with this. And again, today is just the introduction. This is an unbelievable discourse. And again, I encourage everyone to pick up a copy. It's on Amazon. I'll send out, I should probably send out an email with the link, but it's kind of looks like this, All for the Sake of Heaven,
Mhm.
right? You guys have it on camera here, All for the Sake of Heaven, right? If you want to know what we were alluding to before on
I
page
ordered it off Amazon this morning.
Oh, good. Oh, awesome. Good. Dr. Max says she ordered it this morning. That's great. By the way, oh, this is wild. You guys want to see this? Look at the original manuscript. The Hebrew. Look at that. The original Hebrew writing of the author. Look at that. That's the original.
That's amazing.
But don't worry, we're not learning from that. That'll be hard to decipher. We're going to be learning from the English. This is, I'm just gonna, oh, look at that. It's got my name in it. You guys see, where? Last paragraph, somewhere there. All right. Bottom line is, I approve this message. I approve this book, and it's going to be an amazing experience. I wanted to end off with one thing. I think it's really important as we kind of navigate our own lives and spiritual journeys to recognize that, you know, we don't need to make enemies out of everything. Huh? Yeah. 17 bucks. We don't need to make enemies out of everything. We don't need to say, well, oh, you know, the body, enemy, animal soul, enemy, work, enemy, money, enemy. It reminds me of the joke. Parents in a Jewish overnight camp, visiting day, parents walk in, there's a big sign, says, money is the source of all evil. Leave your evil here. Tip your counselors. Anyway, so like, right? So like, we don't need to look at the physical things as the enemy. Look at it as an ally that needs to be cultivated. Don't look at your inner donkey as an enemy that you're trying to break by overburdening, or by, I guess it would be by, you know, ignoring its pleas, right? The donkey is like, feed me. No, you will not eat. Every day is Yom Kippur. That's not the way that the mystics taught us. There were times when, you know, some great tzaddikim used to do that. The Baal Shem Tov taught us, you know, already going back 300 plus years, that that's not the way. That's not the way. That's not the path. That's not the real path to find God. You know, you want to oppress the body. You want to break the body. You want to show the body who's boss, that the soul is better. We do that once in Jewish practice, once a year, Yom Kippur. There are other fast days, but those fast days are because we're so sad about bad things, you know, sad things that happen, temples destruction. Those are sad days that you can't eat because you're so sad. But there's one day a year in which you tell the body, it's not about you, it's about the soul. One day a year, Yom Kippur. 364 days a year, other than the other fast days, but 364 days a year, we're meant to work with the body, not to push it away, not to break it, not to hurt it, not to, you know, punch it in the nose. God forbid. We got to work with ourselves, because ultimately it comes back to this idea. God is one. There's godly potential in the body, in the animal soul. We just got to bring it out. So what's true in the world, we spoke about the world today, like physical activities, is true internally as well. In this discourse, this is going to be like a preview. We're going to talk about this in the context of the great drama of the story between Yaakov and Esau, Jacob and Esau. Why did Isaac, the father, wish to bless his son Esau? Why was he blessing the son, the twin who wasn't so, such a kosher guy? Why is it that the mother wanted to bless Yaakov, Jacob? Why is it that Jacob had to take the blessings in a way that was duplicitous or treacherous or deceptive? Why the deception? We're going to get into all of these nuances as we explore the core idea of all for the sake of heaven. And I do want to mention one thing. When you do a mitzvah, you're going back to the desert. You're doing something that God has isolated and said, this is holy. But when you live your life for a higher purpose, and when I say live your life, every other activity That's what it means to go into Israel. See the difference?
Mm.
I do a mitzvah, right? Wrapped tefillin or light Shabbat candles. Great. That moment is like I'm transported back to the desert. It's a safe, protective, holy moment. But when I'm standing in line in the grocery store and the line is, all the way back because they have one cashier and there's a glitch with the self-checkout. You ever have that? Happened to me last night. That happened to me last night when I bought these bagels, right? Right. So when that happens, the question is, how do we, there's no mitzvah here. There's no mitzvah, right? I'm not wrapping film. I'm not like lighting Shabbat. I'm waiting in line. The question is, do I smile at the person in front of me? Do I engage a conversation that's uplifting? Maybe do I pull out, my phone and study something or, whatever is review some Torah. What do I do in these moments? Do I elevate the mundane moments to make them a little bit less mundane, a little bit more spiritual? That's the lesson of Shlach and Korach. You got to leave the isolation, go into the real world. But when you're in the real world, don't get lost there either. Remember to lift it up to a higher place. All right. Thank you for joining me this morning for our opening session of All for the Sake of Heaven. Remember, pick up this copy if you can. It's going to be helpful to go along with it. You can always review it. And you can look at the great illustrations. I'm kidding. There's only one on the cover. But otherwise, it's a lot of fun. Okay.
Thank you.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Good. All right. This week, we have Monday, we have our Taste in Torah Club. Tomorrow, we have an incredible menu. That's our 55 and over group. We have Tuesday night, Torah studies class, a great Parsha class, followed by Beis Medrash night, one-on-one learning. Wednesday, our new class is not starting yet until July 9th. We have an amazing course called Fascinating Facts, the greatest myths and mysteries, misconceptions debunked in Judaism. And Thursday, we do not have Friday night dinner. We got a Shabbat dinner, spectacular dinner, Taste in Torah Club Shabbat dinner, Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Next Sunday, a week from today. Wow. It's the 3rd of Tammuz, the Rebbe's yard site. Yeah, 1 week from today. You'll be in New York. For that?
No, I am.
Now you are. Very special day. All right, so stay tuned about the class. I'm assuming I'll be in town for it. But yeah, it's going to be very busy. Sunday? Yeah. Yeah.
I land on JFK, so I was going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, a few of my kids will be there. For those of you that know my kids, Nussin is coming back from LA tomorrow night.
Go.
Mendel is coming back.
To stay.
He's coming back, he's kind of finished his, he did the yeshiva, did the shlichut for 1 year, and now he's done. He's going to be working for the school over here, working with Leah. And then Mendel is coming back on Tuesday or Wednesday. Maybe Wednesday. He's coming back from Toronto for a few days until next week. So it'd be nice to have. Shalom is still in Chicago, and he's going from Chicago. He's going to New York. No, who? Oh, the younger ones are next week, July 1st. Shaya and Ellie. I know there's a lot of moving pieces. I don't know. Let me know where they're going to be. It's kind of like that. Let me know where they're going to be. And then, but Reva's here. She's not going anywhere. And then Nussin's going to be here. So that's that.
Kids.
Huh?
You don't even look like you had that many kids.
Because we. Thank you. Yeah, the trick is you send them away. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so very excited. My oldest is 21. Can you imagine?
I know, I did.
It's crazy. And I'm like, I don't know how that happened. Oh, and wait a second. Leah and I, our wedding anniversary is Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, which is this week, Thursday night. Wow. Holy cow, Thursday night. That's our 22nd wedding, and that's a lot. 22nd, thank you. 22nd anniversary. I only know that number because I just do nothing plus one. That's my hack. If Nuss is 21, then we've been married for 22 years. So that is,
Good reference.
it's a good ref. Yeah, it works. The math works. Oh man, that's crazy. I still remember, speaking of wedding, I mean, I hope you don't mind if
Where
I'm
was it?
reminiscing. We got married in New York.
In New York.
Yeah, because my grandmother couldn't fly, like, so we did it. We did it here. Then we flew out. So, Crown Heights, yeah, we got married in Crown Heights, and then we did the first few days of the Sheva Brachos, right, the celebration days. We did that in New York, and then we flew to South Africa for the last one. And we got there like 10 minutes before nightfall, and we had to run and quickly and wash our hands for the bread before whatever. Turns out that you don't have to, but whatever we did. And then we celebrated the last day of the Sheva Brachot over there in Johannesburg. And then we stayed in, I want to say we were there for a few months, a month or two, maybe 4. I don't remember exactly, for a decent amount of time. We went around a little bit. That's where I learned that I could not drive a clutch car. I tried.
Is it left side on top of it?
Oh yeah.
They drive on the left?
It's the other side of the road, and it was her dad had I guess her parents had a non-automatic.
Oh wow.
I'm like, oh, I could do this. What do I do? Just press something and move something. I got this, and I'm newly married, so I'm like, gonna show you, like, yeah, I'm pretty good at things.
Already.
Yeah. So that car alert, I've never felt the car do what it did, but then it just stopped, and I'm like, okay, Leia, if you don't mind. And then I was introduced to the whole concept that in Johannesburg, you don't stop at a red light at night.
Really?
Dangerous. They do carjackings and everything over there. So you just like stop. You just view it as like a stop sign. We're like, okay, and then you go. So I'm like, wow, I married a rule breaker. Like, my wife doesn't stop at red lights. I'm like, why didn't you stop there? She's like, I'm like, oh, okay. So I got it. Safety first. South Africa was great. And then, but South Africa has this thing. Always, even to today, it's like the power goes out all the time. It's just a thing. Power goes out, and like they even nowadays, there's not enough power to go around. So they do load shedding where they have pre-scheduled times where you're not going to have power. And they let you know in advance. There's like an app to let you know, Tuesday from 4 to 7 p.m., there's not going to be any power. So you work around it. Okay. People have generators and they have other things, but like there's just not enough power for everybody for all the time.
These days? Still these days?
Oh yeah, it's gotten worse actually. Oh, wow. They do more and more load shedding. So I'm like, people have their own hot water, they have their own water things, boreholes, whatever they have. I don't know, it's like a whole thing. To try to get to take care of yourself in a large measure. So what happens is, I'm like, this place, come on, they can't get their energy together. This is ridiculous. Blackouts. I'm not like saying it that like harshly, but like I'm like, kind of making a joke about it. Then we're done with South Africa. We fly to New York. We'll fly back to New York. We're gonna live now. We had an apartment. We got an apartment. Live in New York. And the next day, I don't know if you remember this. This was 2003. There was the whole Northeast blackout for like 4 days or 3 days or something. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Hashtag America too. America also. That was so ironic. It was so ironic. It was my fault. No, because I'm like, America is so much better. This place is really good.
That should never come back to you.
Yeah, you see that? Never mess with South Africa. You never know when it's going to come back. But anyway, all's well that ends well. Sorry about that. All's well that ends well. And so that would have been about 22 years ago plus a few months. Anyway, all right, good. Enough about me. Thank you. Wishing everybody a Shavua Tov. And see you soon at all the stuff.
Rabbi.
All right. Ava, good to see you. Carolyn, good to see you.
Good to see you. Is this on record for the thing on the internet, like for the pre-recorded, or did you turn that off yet?
No, it's recording. You want me to turn it off?
Yes.
Give me a second. How do I turn it off?
I don't know.
Here it is.